Whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. Henry Ford. Those simple words have echoed through generations because they reveal something that most people spend an entire lifetime overlooking. The direction of your life is not first determined by your circumstances. It is determined by the silent agreement you make with yourself every single day. Before the world responds to you, your own consciousness has already decided what kind of world you expect to meet. This is why today's message is not about learning another technique. It is about discovering a forgotten power that has been waiting inside you all along. If you truly understand what you are about to hear, repeating one simple truth again and again will no longer feel like empty words. It will become the process through which you reshape the invisible foundation from which your entire reality grows. Most people wake up every morning and immediately begin repeating something 100 times without realizing it. They repeat their fears. They repeat their worries. They repeat the memory of yesterday's disappointment. They repeat the identity they have accepted from years of failure, criticism, rejection, and limitation. Every thought says, nothing ever changes. Every emotion whispers, this is just who I am. Every reaction confirms yesterday's story. Then they wonder why tomorrow looks exactly like today. The mind was never designed to simply record reality. It was designed to participate in creating the experience of reality. Every repeated thought leaves an impression upon your deeper awareness. Every impression becomes expectation. Every expectation shapes perception. Then perception influences your choices, your confidence, your relationships, your opportunities, and eventually the circumstances that appear to confirm what you believe from the very beginning. What you consistently repeat becomes familiar. What becomes familiar begins to feel true. And what feels true eventually becomes the world you recognize as your life. This is why changing your life is not primarily about changing your schedule, your income, your location, or the people around you. Those things certainly matter, but they are branches. The root is hidden beneath the surface. If the root remains untouched, new branches eventually begin to resemble the old ones. Many people change jobs only to meet the same problems. They enter new relationships only to experience familiar pain. They move to new cities but carry the same invisible identity within them. Wherever they go, they meet themselves first. Imagine planting the seed of an oak tree while expecting roses to bloom. No matter how sincerely you hope, the seed determines the harvest. In the same way, your repeated inner conversations become the seeds of future experience. If you constantly tell yourself, life is difficult, your mind begins searching for evidence. If you repeat, people always disappoint me, you notice every disappointment while overlooking genuine kindness. If you believe, nothing works for me, even opportunities appear disguised as obstacles because your awareness has already chosen what it expects to find. But now imagine something different. Imagine choosing one sentence that represents the highest truth about the person you desire to become. Not the person your past has described, not the person other people have labeled, the person who already exists as a possibility within your own consciousness. Then imagine repeating that sentence with attention, feeling, and quiet certainty 100 times every day. At first, your logical mind may resist. It may argue, it may laugh. It may produce memories that seem to prove the opposite. That resistance is not failure. It is evidence that an old identity is being challenged. The greatest prison has never been made of iron bars. It has always been made of unquestioned assumptions. Most people do not realize they are living inside stories they never consciously chose. Perhaps someone told you that success belongs to others. Perhaps failure became so familiar that it felt safer than hope. Perhaps disappointment taught you to expect less from life so that you would never risk being hurt again. Over time, those experiences stopped feeling like events and started feeling like identity. But identity built from repeated limitation can also be rebuilt through repeated truth. The power does not lie in mechanical repetition. Empty words spoken without awareness become little more than background noise. The transformation begins when repetition carries conviction. Even if that conviction starts as a tiny spark rather than a blazing fire, it is enough. Every sincere repetition waters a new possibility within you. You are teaching your subconscious a new language. You are introducing your nervous system to a future it has not yet experienced physically, but can begin experiencing internally. Consider how children learn to walk. They fall countless times, yet they never conclude that walking is impossible. They repeat the attempt until movement becomes natural. The same principle governs every transformation of consciousness. You are not trying to force belief overnight. You are allowing repetition to make a higher identity familiar. Eventually, what once felt impossible begins to feel ordinary. Confidence is not born from one dramatic moment. It grows from countless quiet moments in which you repeatedly choose a new inner direction. There will be days when nothing appears to change. Those are often the most important days. The farmer does not dig up the seed every morning to check whether it is growing. Growth happens in silence. Beneath the surface, roots are forming long before leaves become visible. Your inner world follows the same law. Long before your circumstances reflect transformation, your consciousness has already begun reorganizing itself. Patience is not passive waiting. It is confident expectation that invisible work is already underway. Many people abandon the process because they demand immediate proof. They say, I'll believe when I see results. But the deeper wisdom invites you into the opposite relationship. Believe first, not because evidence already exists, but because your belief becomes part of the evidence that tomorrow will reveal. The invisible always precedes the visible. Every building existed first as an idea. Every masterpiece began as imagination. Every remarkable achievement was once unseen by everyone except the person who carried it faithfully within. So when you choose a simple declaration and repeat it 100 times, you are not trying to hypnotize yourself into fantasy. You are interrupting years of unconscious repetition that has been shaping your life without permission. You are replacing accidental programming with intentional creation. You are reminding yourself that your inner voice deserves more authority than the noise of temporary circumstances. Perhaps your chosen words are, everything is unfolding in my favor. Perhaps they are, I am already becoming the person I was created to be. Perhaps they are, peace lives within me regardless of what surrounds me. The exact sentence matters less than the consciousness from which it is spoken. Let every repetition become less about convincing yourself and more about remembering something your deepest self has always known. And yet, there is a hidden element that determines whether these words remain inspiring ideas or become a force capable of transforming your experience. Most people completely overlook it, even though it quietly governs every attempt at inner change. Before you understand why repetition alone is never enough, you must first discover what gives repeated words the power to reshape reality from the inside out. There is a difference between speaking to your mind and speaking from your being. Most people repeat affirmations as though they are trying to persuade a stubborn stranger. Their words rise from doubt, travel through fear, and return carrying the same uncertainty with which they began. They say the sentence, but they secretly expect nothing to happen. They pronounce abundance while feeling lack. They declare peace while rehearsing anxiety. They speak confidence while identifying with insecurity. The words move, but the consciousness remains still. It is like standing in front of a mirror, smiling with your lips while your eyes remain filled with sadness. The reflection cannot be deceived because it faithfully expresses what is deepest within. Life responds in much the same way. It is not listening only to your vocabulary. It is responding to the atmosphere of your consciousness. This is why feeling is not merely an emotion. It is an inner recognition. It is the quiet certainty that begins to grow when your imagination and your identity stop arguing with one another. Think about moments in your life when you expected something with complete confidence. Perhaps you knew someone was about to call because you had arranged it. Perhaps you knew the sun would rise tomorrow. You did not strain to believe it. You did not repeat it desperately. You simply rested in the certainty that it was already settled. That calm assurance is far more powerful than emotional excitement. Excitement comes and goes. Certainty remains. Your repeated words should gradually carry you into that place where striving dissolves and quiet conviction takes its place. Notice how often your mind has been trained to expect the opposite. When one small problem appears, it immediately begins writing a story about the future. A delayed opportunity becomes permanent failure. One rejection becomes proof that you are unworthy. One difficult season becomes evidence that life is against you. The mind is constantly practicing repetition, but it often practices the repetition of fear. Without realizing it, people become experts at affirming what they never wanted. They rehearse disaster more faithfully than possibility. They meditate on limitations with greater consistency than they ever meditate on truth. Imagine carrying a cup filled to the very edge with muddy water. You cannot instantly replace the contents with clear water by wishing for it. You simply continue pouring clean water into the cup. At first, nothing seems different because the muddy water still dominates. Then slowly the mixture begins to change. Eventually, every trace of the old water disappears. This is exactly how conscious repetition works. You are not violently forcing old beliefs to leave. You are consistently introducing a greater truth until there is no room left for the old story to remain. That is why the instruction to repeat something 100 times is not about reaching a magical number. The number serves a purpose because it demands consistency. It prevents your attention from wandering after only a few moments. Somewhere between the first repetition and the 100th, something interesting begins to happen. The surface chatter of the mind starts becoming quieter. The resistance grows tired. The words begin moving beyond intellectual understanding and sink into a deeper place where identity is formed. It is no longer simply a sentence. It becomes a rhythm. It becomes familiar. And familiarity is one of the greatest architects of belief. Have you ever noticed that songs become unforgettable through repetition? At first, you barely recognize the melody. Then, after hearing it again and again, you find yourself humming it without effort. You no longer consciously memorize it. It has entered you. Your inner conversations operate according to the same principle. Whatever you repeatedly entertain eventually begins speaking itself. If you have spent years unconsciously repeating thoughts of inadequacy, they now arise automatically. The beautiful truth is that the same law works in your favor. When you consistently plant words of strength, peace, wisdom, and possibility, they too begin appearing without effort. One day you will face a challenge that once would have overwhelmed you, and before fear has a chance to dominate, a new voice will quietly emerge from within saying, I am capable. I remain steady. This situation does not define me. That is not positive thinking. That is transformed identity. Transformation always happens twice. First, it occurs in the invisible landscape of consciousness. Later, it appears in the visible events of life. Unfortunately, many people reverse the order. They wait for external evidence before permitting themselves to become internally different. They tell themselves, when I receive the opportunity, then I will believe in myself. When I become successful, then I will feel worthy. When everything improves, then I will experience peace. But peace that depends on circumstances disappears with circumstances. Confidence that depends on success collapses during failure. True inner change must become independent of external conditions if it is to remain stable. This does not mean pretending that difficulties do not exist. Wisdom never asks you to deny reality. It invites you to recognize that temporary appearances are not the highest authority over your consciousness. Storms may surround the ship, but they only become dangerous when they enter the ship itself. Challenges may exist around you, but they gain power only when you allow them to become your permanent identity. You can acknowledge the storm without becoming the storm. You can recognize uncertainty without surrendering your inner certainty. This is spiritual discipline. It is the ability to choose your inner state instead of allowing circumstances to choose it for you. Every repetition becomes an act of inner leadership. You are telling your mind, you no longer decide the direction of my life based solely on old habits. I choose what I will continually nourish. This is one of the greatest freedoms available to any human being. You may not always control what enters your environment, but you possess remarkable influence over what remains within your consciousness. Thoughts may knock on the door of your mind, but you decide which ones receive a permanent home. As this practice deepens, something unexpected begins to happen. You stop chasing every external sign for reassurance. Instead of constantly asking whether reality is changing, you begin noticing that you are changing. Situations that once stole your peace lose their grip. Conversations that once wounded your confidence no longer define your worth. Delays no longer convince you that your future has been cancelled. Your emotional world becomes less dependent upon temporary events and more anchored in an inner awareness that cannot easily be shaken. And that inner stability is where genuine creative power begins to awaken. Not because you have escaped life's challenges, but because you have discovered a place within yourself that remains greater than them. From that place, your imagination becomes clearer, your decisions become wiser, your relationships become healthier, and your actions begin reflecting the identity you have patiently cultivated. You are no longer reacting to life as the person you used to believe you were. You are beginning to respond as the person you have repeatedly chosen to become. Yet there is another mystery that few people ever understand. Even after they begin changing their thoughts and feelings, they unknowingly sabotage themselves through one hidden habit that quietly erases much of their progress. Unless this final obstacle is recognized, they continue wondering why moments of powerful transformation are followed by periods of frustration. Understanding this hidden pattern changes everything, and once you see it, you will never approach your inner conversations the same way again. Guard your heart above all else, for it determines the course of your life. Those ancient words have survived through centuries because they point toward a law that never changes. The heart, in its deepest sense, is not merely the place of emotion, it is the center of your inner agreement with yourself. Whatever settles there becomes the compass directing your thoughts, your choices, your expectations, and ultimately the path your life begins to follow. This is where so many sincere people unknowingly lose the transformation they worked so hard to build. They speak powerful words in moments of inspiration, but throughout the rest of the day, they quietly reverse everything they planted. Imagine spending an hour carefully planting seeds in rich soil. You water them, protect them, and walk away believing a beautiful garden is beginning to grow. Then, every few hours, you return and dig those same seeds out because you cannot yet see flowers. No gardener would expect growth under those conditions. Yet this is exactly what countless people do with their own consciousness. They repeat empowering truths in the morning, but by afternoon they have returned to rehearsing fear. They declare abundance, then spend the day speaking as though lack is permanent. They affirm peace, then feed every anxious thought that appears. They imagine a brighter future, then continuously revisit old memories until yesterday feels stronger than tomorrow. The seed is planted, but it is never allowed to take root. The hidden habit that quietly steals transformation is inconsistency of identity. Not inconsistency of words, but inconsistency of self. For a few moments you become the person you wish to be, then you unconsciously return to being the person you have always believed yourself to be. Life does not respond to your highest moments alone. It responds to your most consistent state. The identity you occupy most often gradually becomes the reality you experience most frequently. This is why awareness throughout the day is just as important as the practice itself. The 100 repetitions are not meant to remain isolated within a single quiet session. They are meant to echo through every ordinary moment that follows. As you walk, work, speak, wait, and interact with others, the atmosphere created by those repetitions should continue living within you. You are carrying an inner fragrance that influences everything you touch. The outer activities may change, but the inner identity remains steady. There will be moments when life appears to challenge this new identity. Someone may criticize you, a plan may fall apart, an unexpected expense may arise. Old fears may suddenly return with surprising strength. In those moments, do not assume you are failing. Often, what feels like resistance is simply the old pattern asking for permission to remain. Every lasting transformation reaches a point where the former identity makes one final attempt to reclaim its familiar place. It whispers, "See, nothing has changed, but now you recognize that voice. You no longer mistake it for truth. You understand that habits become loudest just before they lose their influence. This is where quiet persistence becomes more powerful than emotional intensity. You do not argue with every fearful thought. You do not fight every doubt. You simply return to your chosen truth, again and again, like the steady rhythm of ocean waves smoothing rough stones over many years. Your consistent return begins reshaping the landscape of your inner world. Great change is rarely violent. It is patient. It is faithful. It is almost invisible while it is happening, yet undeniable once enough time has passed. Something remarkable begins to occur when you stop identifying with every passing thought. You realize that you are not the voice of fear. You are the awareness that hears it. You are not the memory of yesterday's mistakes. You are the presence capable of choosing a different future. You are not imprisoned by every emotion that moves through you. Emotions are visitors. Awareness is the home in which they arrive. The moment you understand this distinction, you gain a freedom that external circumstances cannot easily steal. Think of the sky on a stormy day. Dark clouds may cover every visible inch above you, making it seem as though the sun has disappeared. Yet the sun has not ceased to exist. It remains exactly where it has always been. The clouds only obscure your view temporarily. Your deeper self is like that unchanging light. Fear, disappointment, anger, and uncertainty are passing clouds. They can influence your experience if you identify with them, but they cannot define your true nature unless you repeatedly give them that authority. As this understanding matures, repetition itself begins to change. At first, you repeat your chosen words because you hope they will become true. Later, you repeat them because you are beginning to recognize that they have always pointed toward a deeper truth already living within you. The practice evolves from creating a new self to uncovering the self that had been buried beneath years of conditioning. Every repetition removes another layer of doubt, another layer of fear, another layer of limitation, until your natural confidence begins shining through without effort. People around you may notice the difference before you fully understand it yourself. They may comment that you seem calmer. They may wonder why difficult situations no longer disturb you as deeply. They may ask what changed. Yet the greatest transformation will not be something others observe. It will be the peace you experience when you are alone with your own thoughts. For perhaps the first time in years, your inner conversation becomes your greatest ally instead of your harshest critic. Silence no longer feels empty because it is filled with quiet confidence. Solitude no longer feels lonely because you have become at home within your own consciousness. This inner harmony creates a new relationship with time itself. You stop rushing because you trust the invisible process. You stop comparing because you understand that every soul unfolds according to its own rhythm. You stop measuring your worth by temporary outcomes because your identity has become rooted in something far deeper than success or failure. Ironically, this is often the moment when external changes begin arriving more naturally. Not because you forced life to obey your wishes, but because your actions, decisions, perception, and presence have become aligned with the person you have consistently chosen to be. Yet there remains one final revelation, perhaps the most important of all. It is the difference between occasionally practicing this principle and allowing it to become a permanent way of living. For repeating a truth 100 times can certainly begin changing your reality. But living from that truth every moment transforms not only your circumstances, but the very meaning of your existence. That final understanding is where everything comes together, and it is there that the deepest shift truly begins.